Hi, welcome to History Options 2021. So it's going to be a brief outline of what we'll be studying and assessing for history, okay, over the next 2 years. So first of all then, what will we be studying? So in year 10, you get to study 2 units, all right? Now we usually start with USA, a Nation of Contrasts, which is personally my favourite paper from the WJEC, okay? And then you do Depression, War and Recovery. Now, with the USA Nation of Contrasts, what we look at is basically how Black rights developed, all right? People like the KKK, gangsters such as Al Capone, who you can see in that picture there, all right? Changing roles of women, so how women went from having basically no rights, no right to vote, to then how World War One changed that for them. Okay, looking at immigration, so why did people move to America in the first place? Why did they want to go to the land of dreams, I suppose, all right? But there's also things like 1920s cinema, 1920s jazz, okay? So looking at the social aspect as well of the 1920s, you know, famous people such as, you know, Babe Ruth, who's a baseball player. So lots of fun, different, interesting things to look up the USA. But essentially, why were some people living such an amazing lifestyle where others were struggling so badly, such as the Black Americans? Okay. Now we also then do the British paper. There has to be a British element running through the history GCSE. And the next part is what we call Depression, War and Recovery. Depression, War and Recovery really starts up where the USA paper finishes off. So it starts in 1930. Now, I know it's about Britain, but America, what happened in America really impacted the rest of the world, okay? And that mainly is the effects of things like the Wall Street crash. Now, with the Wall Street crash, we look at how that brought in what they call the Great Depression, okay? And the Great Depression meant that people were struggling all over the world. In Germany, hence one of the reasons for the rise of Hitler. But here, because we have relied so much on the United States that we needed that money, they needed that money back because they now were struggling and we were desperate, okay? Then we look at war and how World War II came into being. Now, with World War II, we are predominantly looking at the home front, okay? So things like Anderson shelters, rationing, things that I know a lot of you did in primary school. But we also get to look at that chap there, which is, of course, Winston Churchill, okay, and his influence. And then after that, then we look at recovery. So how did Britain become the country that it is today? All right, how did things help it recover? So things like the beginning of the welfare state with the NHS, which is very relevant, obviously, at the moment, okay, and how that came into being. Now, both of those are worth 25% each, and you can bank that, okay, in year 10. Hopefully the exams will be up and running again. So you'll have those under your belt that you can go into year 11 knowing that you've got part of the real GCSE done. So take some of the pressure off from year 11, okay, which is what I really like about the history GCSE. In year 11 then, we do our coursework, okay. Now with the coursework, there is a field trip, okay, so with the NEA, this will be the end of year 10, we'll be doing the field trip. I will be coming on that with you if we are obviously allowed to go on trips again, if the government says that that's all okay. And it's a great trip away. It's really important as well because it helps. You don't have to go on this, by the way, right, if you don't want to. But what it does do is it helps towards gaining just further understanding for the coursework and getting your marks up then. Now, the coursework will either be on Jack the Ripper or World War One, things that we've covered both of in year 9, all right? And we will do the Jack the Ripper tour, London Dungeons, Imperial War Museum, which you can see in the picture there, an overnight stay, dinner in London, and it is just a nice way, as I said, to get information about the course, to build your marks up, but it's also worth a 20% towards your final GCSE as well. So that's 3 things out of the way that are done before you do the final exam of year 11, which is just quite nice in itself, okay? Now the final exam is the medicine paper, which is the bigger paper, and that equates to the remainder of the percentage of the overall GCSE. And that will be the only paper you will sit, okay, at the end of year 11. And with that paper, what it does is it recaps everything that you've done since year 7, basically. So things like the plague is in there, the Black Death, year 8, the Civil War is in there slightly, with how they use medicine techniques there, okay, with the Stuarts, and the Great Fire of London and things is in there too. And again, the plague, which we covered very slightly in year 8, due to obviously facts that were out of our control. And then it looks at year 9 then, how they developed things like penicillin in World War One. And then all of that comes back together and basically ending up with the NHS, which is what you would have done on the other paper. So it's a lot of recap, all right? Seems like a lot to go from the medieval period all the way up to the modern era. However, because it's things that we've done in school all the way through, and because it is on some of it, as I said, the NHS is on the other paper as well, which you already would have done. It's nice in that sense, and it is interesting. And on the London trip, we do go to one of the original hospitals that were created, which is St. Thomas's Hospital. And we look at all the different techniques they were using there. Okay, so you'll have some information as well that you can take from that trip that will help you with the medicine paper. And that will give you then your overall GCSE. Okay, now people always ask, and this is something that we need to really quickly go through, how do we assess, is there writing? Yes, absolutely, there is writing in History GCSE. You can see some of the ways we assess here. Okay, so front cover sheet, the self-assessment sheet that we will do a test every half term, which sounds a lot, but it will give you an idea of exactly where you are, what skills and maybe topics you need to brush up on. Okay, and you can just see an example of some writing here. This is from the home learning that somebody has done in my GCSE class. And there is sufficient writing with that. Now that's a big example of a piece of work, okay? But what I would say is if you enjoy the subject, if you like writing, this is an old school traditional GCSE where those skills are going to come in to be in, okay? And of course there is writing involved in that, all right? Finally, the question I get asked probably the most, and it is an important one, is job opportunities. Now, with history, because it is an academic subject, it of course does give you those skills that are there. So the researching, analysing, communication and writing, as I've just discussed with essays. But these can be then transferred to many, many jobs. Most college courses, most university courses, you will need to write an essay, okay? And what this GCSE does is it gives you the skills for that, because it is, as I've already said, extended writing, okay? But what it also does is by looking at sources and annotating them, analysing them, as we've done since you were in year 7, it does give you skills that can also be transferred to other jobs. Now, law, of course, is always going to be hand in hand with history. It is, okay? Many people that do history do law and vice versa. Journalism because of the writing, civil service because of the reporting, the police, okay? But also, strangely, things like engineering. And the reason that that's there is because a lot of people that I personally know are engineers and they did history GCSE. And I suppose it's because you were looking at problem solving, aren't you? Okay, with the sources, how useful is this? Does it give us an idea of what life was like? And there's so many more jobs you could get with it. As I said, what I want to, kind of say here is just because you take history doesn't mean you become a history teacher. History is more about the skills side of it, which is the essay writing. It's the research inside of it. It is looking at a piece of information and seeing, do you think this is reliable? Okay, does this give us a real idea of what life was like at that particular point? Okay, is that a true interpretation that that person has created over time? And that's it. Okay, so I would love for you to take this. So if you enjoy it, if this is a subject that you feel that you've enjoyed since year 7, I would say this is the one for you. Okay, and any questions that you have, please feel free to email myself or the head of faculty, Mr. Anthony, and I'll be able to get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you.